Okay, Adam, great to have you with us. Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, we're going to crack on into topic 2. So, is the future of shopping in luxury hotels? In Asian retail, the traditional transactional model is really gasping for air, and we're moving much more towards a model of immersive commerce, where the line between a holiday and a shopping trip has completely vanished. So, Adam, I remember when a luxury experience was just, nice sofa and a glass of champagne in a VIP lounge when someone was about to bring you, an Hermes bag to have a look at. Not me personally, but, speaking for a friend. In January this year, Louis Vuitton opened a global hotel in Shanghai where everything is for sale. That's the bed sheets, the Art de Vivre collection. And so what they have built there really is an immersive experience. And from a shopping perspective, it's not a 20-minute browse and with a sales assistant. It is Louis Vuitton creating essentially 48 hours of complete undivided attention to the brand itself. So my question to you is, this hotel as a showroom, is that the final boss of retail, or potentially does it risk devaluing the brand by making it far too available?
Yeah, as you said, it doesn't change my personal capacity to try these luxury brands or experiences, but I do find this really interesting as a trend. And I guess we've always talked about return on investment, and this is really looking at return on experience. And I think it's very clever from brands like LV because it's actually giving them an opportunity to capture total wallet share from these ultra high net worth individuals. And you're essentially turning a luxury brand hotel into a fully branded ecosystem. If you think about what's gone before, I guess there's a level of being quite disjointed in terms of the channels through which you target. As you said, 20 minutes in a store versus 48 hours in a hotel brings so many opportunities. And a bit more subtle selling, and also contextual selling as well, because if you think about that $5,000 Art de Vivre lamp, it's going to be much more compelling to buy it when it's lit up in a beautifully curated room versus on a shelf. You mentioned final boss of retail. Who knows where we're going to end up with retail, but it is certainly a big move forward, because think of the data that these brands are now getting. It's actually really getting into deep personalization. You know what someone has for breakfast. You know what someone's sleep patterns are. You know how they potentially lounge. And that's really powerful data for them. And also you're looking at, okay, it costs a lot to set up a hotel and run a hotel, but actually think about the cost of acquisition from a lifetime value point of view. Again, coming back to 20 minutes in a store versus 48 hours, it's a lot more compelling, and you're very likely to capture someone's value for a longer period of time. And of course there's risk. There's always risk in any activity you do, and there's probably more scope for things to go wrong. But if I think about modern luxury, I think about access and intimacy, and I think a hotel really dials that up in terms of exclusivity and access to brand prestige, and that is a very powerful thing. So I'm really compelled by this trend, seeing it not just in China but all over the world as well. Dwell time, conversion versus immersion, and brand stickiness are the key things that jump to mind.
Yeah, I guess the question would be, does every brand have a right to do this? I think it means something that it's LV. They've been about travel. They've been about, obviously they're selling an end product, but they've been around for a very long time. They have so much brand equity. Therefore, they almost have the license and the authority to go and build a hotel and do a whole experience. Can I, if I am on running, it's, has slightly less history, or if I'm a challenger brand, can I just rock up in Chengdu and build myself a branded hotel?
Maybe not a branded hotel, but definitely like placement in the hotel, no, because that's
Well,
just a
so
natural.
that's a natural additional question, right? It's like when I think about brand placement in a hotel, I feel a bit put off. If I've paid for a nice hotel room, if I'm on holiday or with business, and there's something in the room that feels like it's trying to sell to me, I'm like, come on, I've paid for this room. Why am I getting this? Fan, I'm sensing you disagree, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
It's actually the two. You already mentioned the Louis Vuitton, like the reason that they can do is because they have been about travel from the day one. And then so if you ask me another brand who can do a hotel, it's going to be Montblanc, which is also fully about travel. But another word is consuming scenario, right? And that's the word that we've been talking up and down. And because the key is that you cannot sell very hard to people and just like shouting, hey, look at this pattern, look at my monogram, and then price tag at €3,000, buy it. But you have to let people be able to experience your product and picture themselves in it. And before, we've been doing it with editorial content or video content or influencer content. But right now it's another entry point for the consumer to fully literally experience it themselves. And so it's not going to be like hard sell. Of course, Louis Vuitton hotel, just the name alone, it sells itself already. Mass can also do that, right? Because in order to buy a Birkin bag, you have to buy the same equivalent amount of other things, including blankets, including dishes and stuff like that. So there are many brands who have that wide range of assortment to begin with that they're capable of having a hotel. But for brands like, for example, On Running, I'm not sure if you guys have noticed, but definitely in China, there are many hotels right now having bicycles in front of their downstairs. So I think Temple House, now Upper House, because all of them right now are called Upper House. So the one in Chengdu, they have bicycles, so you can rent it from them, and you can take it out for a city bike, and those are branded bicycles as well. And then so, for example, if you are on running, then you have to choose a city and a hotel that has running route. So it cannot just be in the middle of the city, right? But if you're on a mountain or if you're a bit remote, then you offer this as a service. So because people, even runners, not every single one of them bring their own running shoes, but if it's available at the hotel and you can think of it, and then there's a running route.
Yeah.
That is the placement right there.
I might say I agree with that. So obviously direct relevance to products is important. But I was listening to a podcast a little while ago, or maybe it was an audiobook on sort of marketing strategies and brand strategies. And one thing that really stuck with me is that the sign of a strong brand is that if Nike opened a hotel tomorrow, even if you'd never seen anything, you have an idea of what every experience is going to be like. Right? And I love that as a sort of collective thought. It's I know what breakfast would look like in a Nike hotel. I know I'd expect to see some tech on the walls, like tracking heart rate. And I would expect the mood and the vibe to be positive, energetic, bright colors. That's the sign of a great brand. So a brand has that, then perhaps you can build one of these experiences. But if you don't, it's not something we would be recommending brands jump into. And obviously it's a very significant outlay.
Yeah, because brand is experience, right? So that's the one sentence. What is brand? Brand is experience.
And maybe that's a test you can do, right? Is if you have an up and coming brand, do you know innately what an experience like this would look like for your brand, as not because you're going to do it, but as a test to the strength and depth of the brand that you have? And Adam, we'd looked at a couple of local players. A couple of things that Japan, just continuing on a theme, the cross and inter-Asia market flow is super interesting. There's a brand, Fufu, in Japan, where they basically brought the idea of hot springs into the heart of Ginza. It's very central retail, luxury destination in Tokyo. Is this something where that's actually sort of post-pandemic and it's a tactic to capture high net worth spend? Or, is this a slightly different approach to capturing the luxury consumer that may exist, 10, 20 years from now?
It's certainly clever. I think there must be some psychological aspect to feeling a bit more relaxed and loosening your wallet. I certainly feel that way. Yeah, look, we've talked a long time around kind of the integration of hospitality and retail and building brand equity in hybrid spaces. And I think this is particularly interesting because you're removing that friction of shopping and replacing it with the flow of living. I think, that you're giving experiential anchors and ultimately catching consumers, as I said, when they're most relaxed. And I think that's something that has been moving that way for a long time. And I think it's a very clever tactic from that Japanese brand, and expect to see more and more of that as we go forward.
And Fan, in terms of local players, there was Songzan, which I believe, started off with a number of locations across Tibet and maybe Qinghai, certainly that area in China. They are an experience and they are a hospitality experience, but they have their own clothing lines and they have fashion shows with their own staff where the look and the feel is really baked into the whole experience. Is that unique to China? What are the unique things that play there that make Songzan be able to do that?
I think it's not unique to China, but Songzan is definitely unique to, I would say, the whole world, because they have geographically they're there, and also they have the cultural richness they know what they're trying to promote, because they are promoting and they're sharing that part of the culture with the rest of China and also the rest of the world. So that it's very easy for them just to build a whole universe and then to scale on top of that. And also I think there are many local hotels in China that many brands have collaborated with already. And not saying it necessarily, but mainly in the hotel that located in very popular and also very like culturally rich and also very naturally rich area like Lijiang or Yangshuo or Tibet or Qinghai. So those are not Beijing or Shanghai, but those are other parts of China that historically has so much to tell and so much to share. And so the way that they built the hotel, the way that they run a hotel is correlating with the nature and the natural surrounding that they're sitting with. And also like many brands, they have been collaborating, of course, at starting with just on private dinner and hosting together. But now you can also see that there are other things like for example, like items that get into the hotel, but actually from the brand. And there's a good example. I was talking to a client, and the client was having holiday in Aman in Phuket.
Very nice.
Very nice. In that hotel, there is a bathing robe, and she tried it on, and she loved it so much because it's just so soft and everything. And she asked her husband to go downstairs to buy for her immediately. He didn't buy it because it turned out to be $1,000. You see, but people will get triggered into shopping behavior as soon as they feel, oh, this is so good.
Yeah. Well, you could just do it the British way, where you just put it in your suitcase and forget to take it out again. Kidding. Not advocating for crime here. Yeah, but no, but both of those are examples where, as you said, like the experience happened. You had the item. It's all wrapped up in the whole experience that you're having.
Yeah.
And then you want to take a piece of that home with you, ideally paying for it.
I did have a question. We know how important retail associates and store staff have been in China over the years. What does the new retail associate store staff look like when they may actually have to be a concierge at the same time in a hotel or facilitate spa treatments? So yeah, I did have a thought as to kind of how that industry in itself will evolve. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts.
Because it's actually already very, very similar, no? Because not any brands, but if you think of like luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, like those big houses, then when you get welcomed and serviced by the staff and also the client advisors in the store, it's very, very similar in terms of hospitality compared to luxury or high-end hotel. And so I think that is like the natural link that they have there because hotel has been luxury, right? And also if you think about it, LVMH, they bought Oriental Express, right? That's so luxury is not just about clothing or handbags or like or the mass consumption, but it's about like that level of lifestyle. And then within that level, there are many, many things that you can do.
Yeah, it's the picture and the associations you build up for the brand over time that build the brand. Then this is really interesting where you're not just doing, the Orient Express as a kind of pop-up. You're owning it. You are, yes, driving revenue for people that have that experience and pay for that travel. But then it's a win-win because you're building the brand with that storytelling and the content and the association with high-end experiences. And I think something I draw from what both of you have said is that you have a cash-rich, time-poor consumer who is wealthy, and actually you can shortcut these experiences. So could be a trip to Singapore where you are doing retail and you're staying in an amazing hotel and you're dining and you're having wellness. Increasingly we're seeing those kind of trends where all of the needs of that high net worth or affluent consumer are being met within 24, 48 hours. The extra luxury perhaps is time. It's the time you get back. It's the photos you get. You didn't have to be there for 2 weeks. It's just something that speaks to your lifestyle and is beautifully created to you.
Yeah. And on top, there's also a restaurant to wrap this up. Next time you guys in Heathrow, you should definitely try the Louis Vuitton Cafe because you can feel the world around you.
Interesting.
It's right next to Louis Vuitton.
I'm not target market, but I will definitely give that a go. Maybe we are target market.
The wine is good, and also instead of just waiting on the bench or the oyster bar right next to it, the same price, but you get Louis Vuitton service and also everything. You can really feel the brand, and their wine is good.
Fan, I will take that on in the name of research. So you heard it here first. No. So to wrap this up, really interesting discussion. I think that for global brands, the ability to stop seeing hotels and retail as separate sectors and look at the liminal lines between the two, I think is super interesting. I also think that looking at forms of hospitality as long form advertising, where you're measuring ROI as not just the room rate, but also the basket size at checkout, makes sense for brands that have the authority to do so. So perhaps your next store might need a concierge, might need 24-hour room service menu to go with it.